Okay.
Wow, you don't miss a trick, hey, Tom?
No, you don't. You
Good
can't
Lord.
get anything past Tom.
Good,
You'll
yeah.
notice. That's good.
Mhm.
This is
Oh,
not
sorry.
really.
No, go on, Rach. Yeah, go.
I was just going to share a story. This is not really a question or anything. I was just going to share. So I've made a goal this year to read the Bible. I've never actually read through the entire Bible in a year. So I bought one of those 365. You read you read some passages, some old, some new. Well, I'm really, really far behind. I'm already failing, which is like most, New Year's resolutions. You make it until about the mid-January and then you fall off. But so I was catching up. But ironically, what I read in the Bible was, it always happens this way. What you're reading makes sense to what's happening right now. And it was the passage that was, if you're not with us, you're against us. And I really feel like that's kind of where we are at this point. Like, I don't argue with people in my comment section on TikTok anymore like I would have, because I'm just at this point, if you're not with us, you're against us. And I'm not going to take the time to explain it all to somebody if somebody who's genuinely curious, then yes. But if someone's just being difficult, then I'm not going to argue.
Yeah.
But then later that night,
arse hat, Rach.
yes, you stole that from me, Tom. You stole that one.
I hadn't heard it for like 15 years.
It's true.
Yeah, you reminded me of that one. Yeah.
I love that. But then I'm reading the Chronicles of Narnia to my son, and we're on, I think it's the 4th book. It's Prince Caspian. And in the book, it's the same thing. Aslan's going around and he's gathering people from the town, and there's people that are scared of him and run away. And then there's people who join him. And I'm like, that is so crazy that in the same day I'm reading the Bible earlier and there's that passage. And then later on in the night, I'm reading to my son before bed, and that part of the book comes up where, he's basically just finding his followers. And I personally really like that series. I know you've read it, Tom, too. The Chronicles of Narnia.
I love Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I love it.
Yeah. But I just love those. I love those. I don't know, as you call them, Janine, like nods. We're on this journey, and here's where we are. And yeah.
Yeah.
You should do the numbers on Aslan, Rach.
Aslan. Okay.
Yeah, you should do the numbers.
Let me get my gematria calculator out.
Yeah.
Tom still doesn't use a gematria calculator on it. He still does it the old-fashioned way.
Wow. I'd be literally like counting on my fingers.
Tom,
I did in the early days,
47.
Yeah, it's 47. There you go. Yeah.
Aslan's 47. That's awesome.
Golden
No wonder
Lion.
I love the book so much.
Yeah, and he got resurrected. And that brings me on to another question I had. So just a few days ago, there was this re-emergence, or I guess a re-emergence, or at least a reporting of something that happened maybe a year or so ago. So Virginia Thomas and the text message series, and that was put out on Fox News and other news networks, and there's 4 or 5 editions of it out there. But basically, it was talking about, it mentioned Gitmo, mentioned some other things as well, but I did the numbers on Virginia Thomas. Virginia is 89, Thomas is 76, a magic wand, contacts. But if you add those together, it's 165, which is resurrection, remote viewing, Christ bloodline, even Westminster, actually, which is the city within London. Well, it's the second city of London. But I guess my question, Janine, was I felt that was a major, massive red pill, what they did there, because it made normies kind of look at like, well, Gitmo, what's that? And barges, prison barges, and all those other things. Yeah. The other thing about it is Gitmo, the abbreviation of Guantanamo. Gitmo is actually 64, which is movie, which is Tenant, which is Israel, which is Jubilee. And it's also, if you do Guantanamo comes to 107, which comes to Trump's. It also comes to Joseph Biden. So you can see how dark and light marries up.
Interesting.
And it also, if you do Bay, B-A-Y, that comes to 28. But Cuba is 27, which is JFK, which is code. But Guantanamo Bay, if you do 107 plus 28, comes to 135 plus Cuba, 162, which comes to Trumpology, which is the name of my product. But yeah, I just wondered, if you've done reads on that and what that bigger picture is in terms of that, because I just thought it was massive red pilling.
Yeah, so just even having that on the news, those words on the news and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I thought it was brilliant. And of course, they know people are going to stop frame it. And of course, they framed it out of context, like they were actually spilling the beans, which of course I shared everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but of course,
it might have been on your channel. I saw it first.
It probably was. Everybody wrote me and said, okay, that was blah, blah, blah. But I was like, who cares? Like, it literally says that. That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm kind of funny because I believe however you can get it out there, like I'm with the white hats that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people complain and they write to me and they say, well, they're doing just as bad as the bad guys. I said, when you're dealing with this kind of devious thousands of years of dark magic, like, do you actually think you got to use your white magic right back at them? Like, you can't play nice. Playing nice. That's what got us into this.
Yes.
Boundaries and sticking up for ourselves and being bringing out our sword of truth. We're going to need to wield a sword, even if it's just with words and just boundaries. So not literally, obviously, but possibly in the background, there's going to be some of that too, because if those tribunal stories are true, we're going to have to face that's what needs to be done. I mean, some people just don't like that part of the human, like it's the human experience here.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to protect, like I would protect my family in that way if I had to, like I would. My son, are you kidding? Or daughter?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
Between me and they meant harm to them in a big way. No way would I, tip pussyfoot around that, excuse the term.
Well, sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, don't you? I mean, you need
I'm
more
going
to
back
figure
at
out.
them. Yeah, it's like we're humans. This life, yes, we're souls living in a body, but we actually sometimes all of those things have to be used.
Yes,
it's part of a human experience here.
Yeah.
And if you don't want that, you wouldn't have come down here in a body. You'd have stayed conscious.
Exactly. Are we going to see more of that story develop?
Which one? The one about
the text, the text messages from Virginia Thomas.
They might move on to another story. It might evolve because this part's a little fickle. So they're just throwing it out there to see what sticks and how long it sticks. It's all part of them trying to wake people up. That's what I think, all of it. So it might move on to a different story.
Okay.
And maybe every time it gets where it gets closer to the truth, closer to the truth, closer to the truth. I've been noticing that they're just brutally saying things that we've been saying for 2 years, this community. So it's getting really in your face. Like it's going to be really hard to avoid. Even real sleepers are going to have to notice it at some point.
It's quite fun sending. I sent it to some family members and friends, and they're like, well, I did say those words about 2 years ago to you, but so that's good. Bring it on. I think it's a really fun time right now because we are seeing the things that we've been talking about for so long. Yeah. Because the only way that people will believe it is in the mainstream media, and maybe there will be an EBS as well. But I think, I'm sure that a lot of the red pilling has to be done through the mechanism that turned them off in the first place. That's the only way to reverse it. You have to.
Mm-hmm. Janine, I just used that word, the pussyfoot word. I haven't used it in years, and then you just said it too. So it's kind of ironic that we both just pulled it out of the back of our brains.
Yeah.
I had a question about remote viewing. I just did a George collection video on remote viewing, and he was in the CIA, and then he started his own company. His name, what was his name? David Morehouse was his name. I'm curious with remote viewing. This fascinates me. But if somebody is trying to remote view you, would you get like a headache? Would you know somehow? Would you feel dizzy? Like, I'm curious because, you know, the CIA trains people how to remote view. You can get inside the mind of a pilot, for instance, inside of a plane, so you can see the plane's capabilities. So I'm curious, if someone was to try to get inside of your mind, would your
Interesting.
body
So they
recognize
take it a
that?
step further than channeling the person, because a tarot reader, like all day long, I'd in a way do that, but not necessarily. Okay, so someone would ask, can you see how my ex-husband saw me in the last years of our marriage? That I must have
Oh,
done that
gotcha.
a million times. It's like, okay, or my ex-wife, and you literally get inside the head of, because that's what a reader does. Okay, so,
Mhm.
but I've never gone as far as like, and I've even had got the ideas of how they found them physically, like, so smelling, and like, I know it's weird, but like I would get really weird information, let's just say, about what they really felt about that person, good or bad, and I would have to tell it in some diplomatic way if it was bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was hard to do that, but never did. But I bet I could see how you could train somebody with like my psychic abilities, because and I know there's lots of people with that ability. I'm not just saying I'm the only one with that, of course not. Any reader who's worth their salt is doing that all day long anyway. I was getting inside the heads of people all day long, but then to take it further and see out the eyes of and see something like that's interesting. But I could, it's we're 3/4 there just as a tarot reader.
Yeah.
So wow.
I don't know. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about it and see what.
So
what you
how did
thought.
you phrase it again?
You know, if somebody was being remote viewed, like would
they
the
feel
person
it?
who is being viewed, would they know that it's happening? Would they feel like headachy or?
Largely wouldn't even notice.
Okay.
They could be completely oblivious. Okay, but unless they really, really suspected somebody was spying on them psychically. So if they were a really aware person that way, they might be able to block it. I even get.
Okay.
So, and if somebody was worried about that, what they might want to do is create a ritual where they don't agree to that. Because if you don't know, it's in a way agreeing. That's what they've been doing to humans. But if you every day created psychic boundaries and made an intention every day that said nobody's getting in unless I let them in consciously, you could probably stop that. So you'd have to be just really have a spiritual practice that verbally did not agree to that, any of that, whoever it was coming from, then you could probably stop it, because you have to have agreement. But part of agreement is when you don't know and you let it happen. Well, they take that as agreement. Look what they've been doing to the human race,
Right.
like feeding it to us on all these levels. We don't know what's going on, so we just go along with it. Okay, so I feel like if you thought that's a possibility and there's a reason they might be looking at you, you might want to create a spiritual, like every morning I have like things I go through that sort of start my day. And especially if I'm going to be doing psychic work that day, right? So
yeah, I always just ask, I pray every day and I say, put the bubble of protection around me. And I just literally picture like a bubble around me that no one can penetrate. That's what I do. I don't know if that works or not, but that's
and
what I've
maybe
been doing.
everybody needs to start doing that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't. So Bubbles 44, which is faith, it's hope. It's also Mask, it's Abraham. But if you do Bubble of Protection, Protection is 135, which is Ivana Trump, which is John Trump, who worked with Tesla. But that comes to 200. 200 comes to Mount Rushmore, comes to Westminster Abbey, comes to Like a Thief in the Night. But if you do the Bubble of Protection, it takes you to 233, which comes to the 10 Days of Darkness, gold-backed digital currency, Follow the White Rabbit, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So that's a cool phrase, the Bubble of Protection. I haven't heard that before, right? So
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you're welcome to use it if you want, Tom.
I've been thinking about like the process of when you draw cards,
Yeah.
and something you just said about when you channel. So, is it like for me with the numbers? I feel like I'm kind of in a, I don't know, I guess just my intention, my awareness, my kind of flow state of just allowing me to pick up messages, and then numbers confirm it. So I think what happens with me is I'll think something, or I'll see something, or hear something, and I'll notice it, and then I'll just do the numbers on it, and that's kind of how it builds up. So I don't go around looking for numbers. I just allow whatever comes in, and if it seems to put a light bulb on in my head, then I'll work out the numbers, just like I did there with Rachel with bubble of protection, because it was unique. Do you do you find it a similar, so when you're channeling, because I'm curious as well how when you pull the cards, there's the randomness element to it, but there seems to be kind of a conduit that allows the spirit world to direct the cards, much in the way, similar way with the numbers. I feel things and sense things, and then I'll just work out the numbers, and it could be any variation of numbers, but I have this kind of narrow bandwidth of being a truther, working with the white hats, etc. And they're the things that are always in my periphery, and in my main vision as well. So I always select them, see them, and then others come in as well. So I'm just curious the actual feeling and the kind of the magic of the cards, really. How the process works and how it's evolved from you when you were, I think you said you were a child or a young teenager when you started doing the cards, and how it's developed for you in time. I'm just curious of the actual kind of process, the mechanical, spiritual, conscious process of how it works.
Well, I wasn't that young when I was doing, in fact, I was brought up, my family was quite Catholic, so cards weren't something we grew up with. But somebody took me to a card reading with an old gal, like she'd be in her 70s, I'm thinking. Of course, I'm in my 60s now, so I better not be calling her so old, but yeah. Not too far behind her. But she would have been in her maybe late 70s, and she was doing readings out of this lounge, like a bar. We called it the quiet side of a bar back then. Okay. So I would have been 27.
27 code.
Yeah.
JFK,
so
yeah.
That's when maybe, or 25 between 25 and 27. So I got taken for a reading by another friend, a mutual friend, who brought me to this reader, and I got a reading. So yeah, maybe I was more like 25, and she's basically read my whole life with this one layout that when I did one-on-ones with clients, I did that layout. I often did it. It's not the zodiac, but another one. And you count out numbers. Interesting. So you get the person to give me a number between 1 and 9. That's what she said. Okay. So I think I don't remember the number I said, but whatever I said, probably 5. It's my favorite number. So then she counts out 5, and every 5th card she puts down, and she does it in a layout. So every 5th card, but there's a certain layout she did. So I learned that layout much later when I studied tarot. So anyway, she told me my whole life, including that I'd be on, here's what she said. Don't forget, this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, I guess it would be in the 90s, early 90s. Or no, wait, it would have been, I can't remember, late 80s. Anyways, figure it out, you guys, I'm 60. Somebody figure it out. Anyway.
We don't think you are though, Janine. You look like you're out.
Oh, you don't look, not even close. No.
Yay. That's good.
Not even close, yeah.
She even said, I'm going to be on television. Okay, television. I guess this is television. Being a reader, and I would become known, really well known. And I would have a huge following, which is interesting, because now I got 150,000 subscribers on one channel and 93 or 4 on the other channel. I'm heading for 100,000 on the other channel, which is, I used to call it my little channel, but it's not so little anymore. So it's pretty good, right? And but the way she described it, it's going to get even bigger. So I'm thinking we must be right about a lot of these things. Because if I'm wrong about the whole white hat thing and everything, obviously I'm not going to keep going as good as I'm going.
Exactly.
But if we're right about it, like I think we are, okay, and some of these things actually come to pass, like the big things that we've been talking about for months and months, I believe that would really set it up for bigger even fame. And she was describing it even bigger.
Yeah.
Where I would be doing cards for and or being asked to visit very well-known people's places and everything. I'm thinking maybe Mr. T has me over for a card reading with, you know, his family or something. I don't know. I'm just
I can
joking
see
around.
that. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, or some famous truthers have me over, whatever. And that's kind of already started and I feel like it's on the way.
Yes.
So she read my whole life, including getting my daughter. I was not expecting to have any children this lifetime, and certainly wasn't looking for them. And then I ended up with these 2 kids. That's brilliant that I have them. And so lucky for me, the universe didn't listen to what my ego said and gave me 2 kids anyway, in spite of myself. And yeah, like she got everything, and she did it in one layout in about an hour and a half. Wow. She read my whole life. It's still happening as we speak. That's a good reading. Well, that's ridiculous. I've never even heard of tarot. And I'm going to be a stewardess, I said.
There you go.
She said, you will never be a stewardess. She said, all of your applications will be, the universe is going to rip them up. Nobody's even going to answer you.
Oh my God.
Sure enough, I never got one answer back. I must have wrote to every airline that was, and they were hiring then. Air Canada was hiring right at that. And I was desperate to be a stewardess, and nobody even wrote me back. So the universe was like, nope, you're going to be a tarot card reader. She said someone would give me a deck of cards, and I would fall into a meditation and get obsessed with them. And that's exactly what happened about, I can't remember how much later, but on my birthdays, a friend gave me a deck of the Thoth deck, the Thoth, Aleister Crowley's deck. And interesting, because the dark cult really uses that one, right? Because it's Aleister Crowley was a big part of it, but the woman that painted the paintings was an incredible spiritualist who was really good white magic. So it's a great combination of dark magic and white magic, masculine and feminine. So it's actually a really tricky deck to use. You have to be really, really sure what side of that fence you're on. But it's brilliant. It's a brilliant deck. I learned on it. I found a teacher, a friend of mine took me to my first, she found a teacher who was teaching it, and her and I studied together with this gal. Turns out the woman that taught me was from a family, but we didn't know to call it that then. But she described her family. He was a preacher, her dad, and the mom was the wife of this preacher, and they moved all over. And they had many, many children, but they had them all performing, disgusting things for the cameras. They would photograph it, sell films of it, and do it to each other just for their own, it was horrifying what they were doing. They birthed their kids just to be basically trafficked and in this way. Satanic ritual abuse. Yeah. So she grew up like that, escaped the family, and then was a card reader, but unfortunately, wonderful woman in lots of ways, but kind of messed up, unfortunately. I think she passed away recently, actually. She was quite elderly. Last time I talked to her, she wasn't even making any sense on the phone. So she was very in her 90s. So I would be safe to say she's left the earth plane. Connie Leonard, if anybody wants to look her up. But she was an incredible reader, but her life was really hard. So all of this led me somehow here to what I'm doing. I didn't even know about that stuff then, but she would tell us stories about it. It's like, whoa.
Wow. That's interesting. You mentioned Thoth, Thoth. So I did the numbers on that. That's 91. That comes to Psych. So my channel, Psych Club, Thoth, Thoth Club, same value. Interesting. 71 is Lady Diana. It's Smart. It's Moses. Interesting. And if you do Thoth deck is 23. I am. So Thoth deck is 94, John. white hat.
Mm.
So it all, like with all this, it depends on your intention. You know, everything. You know, numbers are good. Everything's inherently good. But if your intention is pure, you'll be fine. If it's not, then you're going to get messed up. You know.
Yeah.
That's what
Some
it is.
days when I'm not feeling really clear, I don't use that deck. No way.
Right.
It's
What one
too
have you got
tricky.
today?
It could trick you. Oh, this one's really feels really safe to me.
What is that?
That's
deck?
the Rider-Waite. The Rider-Waite. A lot of people don't like the makers of it. Could have been a kind of on the dark side, but the deck doesn't really come across as tricky as the Thoth deck.
What's the last word on that, Janine? Wait.
Rider-Waite, W-A-I-T-E. Those are two names, last names of people that had to do with it, right? Again, a woman and a man team sort of thing to create it.
Right. Huh.
Yeah, but I believe your energy just transfers into how the cards fall, like with your intention to you're asking, the universe just uses the tool. So your cards aren't magical on their own, but your energy transfers the magic, and the universe is, you guys agree to work with the universe. Universal knowing uses the cards and manipulates them, because the weirdest things happen. You could ask a question 3 times in a row. I don't recommend doing this, by the way, and it'll come out 3 different ways to say the same thing, or it might even come out the same. Sometimes you even get the very same cards in just different positions, but it's all saying the same thing. Like, cards work if you got the intention to work with them, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They work.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I just did the numbers on the Rider-Waite. So Rider is 54, which is love, which is also orbs. We mentioned that with the golden orb with Rachel. A Waite, W-A-I-T-E, is 58, which is Nasara, which is Ivanka. I mentioned her earlier. Star is 58. But if you do the Rider-Waite, that comes to 145, which comes to numerology. And we mentioned that earlier. And also we mentioned Russell Brand 145. So it's interesting how all these kind of key numbers we've mentioned, and then these new phrases or new words that I didn't know, but it's there, you know. I feel like I want to get a deck. I want to just have a feel and just see what they're like, you know. Yeah. Very cool.
I wouldn't know what anything meant. That's why we have you, Janine.
Right on. I got to get going though, guys.
Yeah, I got to get going too.
It's been a lot of fun, Janine.
Yeah.
And God bless you. We'll see you again very soon.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Rach. And
yes,
and again, if people have got to the end of the video, do check out the links below. The Tom Numbers Show, Top of Your Game, is launching. Well, it's launched now, as you'll see. So check it out. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. God bless. Take care.